Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. You're here with us in our fifth season of talking about inner work and the work that it takes to have a beautiful life. We're here with our coaching hats on and our personal hats on and our friendship hats on, aren't we, Laurel?
We are.
Wear all the hats and talk all the things. Yeah,
We are.
we are.
And it feels really good to be back.
It does. It really does. I feel like as we roll into this fifth season, it's just, you and I have developed such a rapport and such a friendship over time. So it's really lovely to have this time together and really be able to dig into all that we do here and share that experience together. Really
Yes.
grateful for that.
And
Yeah.
and I hope our listeners feel that as well,
Yeah.
right?
I hope so too.
When we are talking to each other about knowing that they are there,
Yeah.
engaged in the conversation. And that inspires me so much to know that we are bringing our thoughts and our ideas and our own life experience to the world in this way.
Yeah, yeah. And for our listeners, Laurel and I have together been coaching for quite some time, decades upon decades, if we add it all up. And, to be able to take time here on the podcast to share, some of our experience and our wisdom is both a gift to us as much as I hope you feel it is for you, because it's a very special time, for us to be steeped in the work and be of an age where we really want to give back too, right? So here we are.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing. It's a good
It
thing.
is.
Yeah. So today, we
Our
are going to
conversation.
actually have a conversation and share a topic which we haven't hit head on yet on the podcast. So I'm excited to do it today and to really see what arises from our conversation. And we're going to focus on becoming resilient today.
It's
So
such a great topic, isn't
it
it?
is.
And
It's
I
a
can't
juicy
believe.
word. It's a
And
juicy word, isn't it? It's almost like a tasty word,
well,
resilient. It's like
both of
food. It's
them,
almost like
like,
food.
right? Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with you, right? It's
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah.
But also the word becoming, right? The
Yeah.
combination of those two words, becoming resilient.
Yeah.
There's so much we can talk about today in
I
this.
I love the word becoming because, I always think of this when people talk about trying to do something or trying to change or trying to write. And I always think of that Nike commercial that, became so popular for a while years back. It was, don't try, just do it.
Just do it,
Just do
right?
it. Just do it. Right. And I love the idea of becoming because I feel like in the word becoming, right, we talk about this being rather than doing, being, right, and experiencing our beingness. And becoming is like I don't know, the verb of being, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's a very cool word. It's like always we can become and evolve. It's like the expression of evolving, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And for me, it's exactly that. I've been thinking a lot and feeling a lot into becomingness, more so
Mm,
than being.
mm,
Because for me, being implies that we've arrived at our destination.
mhm.
But becomingness or becoming just has this warmth, this feeling of changing and growing and
Yeah.
evolving.
Yeah.
You
It's like
know,
the verb for transformation almost.
yes.
Yeah. Becoming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this other word, resilient, which I find so juicy, is like,
Tell me why. Tell me
yeah,
more about that.
I think it's because in it for me is a lot of power. There's a lot of power in this word. And then there's a lot of recognition that we could be otherwise, right? Which would be not so powerful and maybe messy and, all the things that we often feel sometimes. It's like a big word that refers to all that we are as a human. We aren't resilient, we are resilient. We struggle, we overcome. There's just so much there around growing as a human being. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And transformation.
Mm,
Often I think about, you know, resilience is my ability not to get stuck.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, I often think about the things that we praise in people, right? Maybe we, or in ourselves, right? Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's some form of success, right? Maybe it's good ethical behavior, right? Honesty, integrity. But how often do we really admire someone's resilience?
Yeah. Well, we do. I think we do a lot because I always think of resilient, like the hero's journey is
Yes,
usually some form of resilience, right? They're overcoming some obstacle
yes,
and rising into a new sense of self or rising to the occasion, rising to some superior experience, right? And so
yes,
I do feel like we love the hero's journey. We really do.
we do.
Yeah. And so you had a really rich conversation last week with your
With
guest.
Nick Tucker, I did. And, it's just, I don't know Nick well, but his story is just amazing.
I know.
And his growing up was very different than mine and most people I know,
Mm.
where he really, had to overcome adversity from a very young age
Yeah. Yeah.
and experienced, you know, s- he spent a good part of his childhood in foster care,
Mm.
but always went back to his mother's home. So he was in between a lot. And so when I think about that adversity of having maybe what I might describe as, one foot in two different worlds, right? Like 2 feet, I don't know how I would say it, each foot in a different world. The safety and security and family structure of his foster family. And then, some instability, I'll say. I don't want to say insecurity, but instability, with his mother. And so that, overcoming of adversity really does, you know, I guess help. And it's the teacher of becoming resilient.
Right. Adversity is the teacher of becoming resilient. Ooh, that's a good phrase, Laurel. Let's all stay with that for a minute. Do we ever think that way? Oh, here's some adversity, right? It's going to teach me how to be more resilient. I don't think we
Well,
always greet it that way, do we? But
no,
what
we
a
don't.
great
But
way to greet it.
that
Yeah.
saying that I'm going to say at times I hate what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Yeah, right,
right?
right.
Like that is just the most absurd statement when you think of it
No,
literally.
I
But if
know.
you really think about, adversity and difficult times and
Mhm.
challenging times, big challenges or small, really do
Mhm.
change us.
Mhm.
you know, I think Nick mentioned, part of his story was when he was 23, he walked from Maine to California.
So cool.
He took
Yeah,
on this journey with a friend
yeah,
at 23, and it changed him.
yeah, yeah,
And so, who he was at the beginning of the walk was not who he was at the end of the walk. And
yeah.
I think about that in our own life, my own life, and other people I know lives. Like, we can't go through something that is challenging
Hmm.
without coming out, stronger, maybe wholer, if that's a word, right? More
Hmm.
complete,
Yeah,
more self-aware on the other side of a
yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about, I just want to kind of qualify this for anybody listening is, if you're in a situation where you're experiencing trauma or you feel like a victim of some sort, right? We are not talking about you having that experience and then coming out on the other side stronger. The whole coming out on the other side is the whole process, right, of going within and doing the healing work required so that you no longer are a victim, feel like a victim, are in a situation where you're, threatened anymore, that kind of thing, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, because I feel like I don't want people to misunderstand, the breadth of what we're talking about. Because we're really, don't forget what our podcast is. This is all about the inner work, right? Which we call the beautiful work. So it's coming back to when we are faced with adversity, how do we look inward and dig deep to do what needs to be done to overcome, to rise to the occasion, to grow, to evolve into, the greater part of ourself that can handle whatever it is we are in, right? And most
Yes.
of the time, as a child, that's very difficult. That's why Nick's story was so powerful, right? Because as a child, you get imprinted with difficult situations. You could, become the victim and stay the victim versus finding the resilience within to say, I'm going to have a different life. I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to treat, my relationships differently, XYZ, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
big
And it's
deal.
so interesting because I think about, learning, right? Not just overcoming adversity or becoming resilient, but how can we, how can we learn from an experience that we are healing from or we have healed from, right?
Hmm.
It reminds me of this exercise. It's a writing exercise that Dr. Rich Gorsuch, who was my first energy practitioner, had me do at one time. And it's the writing of "It Happened for Me," where you write a circumstance that happened to you, and you write the circumstance, pretty factual. And then you write, "It happened for me." And you have to dig deep into
Hmm.
all that you have become because of that circumstance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that helps you to kind of remove yourself from the victim role to maybe the student role, to maybe a new self role,
Hmm.
right? Where we are now the student and we have
Yeah.
learned from our experience.
Yeah. And I think that in really very horrible circumstances, when people are victims of really terrible things, it actually the evolution, right, that the victim has to go through is one of incredible. It's an incredible spiritual journey ultimately, right? Because to find compassion, to find your path of forgiveness, to find the way to let go, to not be defined any longer by that whatever it was. This is really big inner
Is
work. Yeah.
It really is because I really think the recipe for overcoming the challenges, the difficult times is having hope, having faith, having a strong belief in something bigger than yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because when we try to process, you know, maybe the good in something or what we've learned and how we've grown because of a difficult situation or a challenge, it's hard to do that
Yeah.
without some belief that there's a meaning and a purpose to every experience we have.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the spiritual. I think you're really well describing like some of the spiritual aspects of going through adversity, right? And or
Yes,
something really difficult and then learning how to grow from that. So let's set a little bit of a all right, so let's say that's some of the spiritual work. Some of the beginning work, right, is just the finding our safety again, right? Finding a
yes,
place where we feel safe, and first physically, because if we go back to the kind of Maslow's hierarchy, right, it's hard to move up to the next level of processing things if you're not in a safe place.
that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we always have to be attending to that piece of the puzzle, I feel like. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
safe within ourselves and
Yeah.
safe outside of ourselves,
Outside of ourselves.
right?
And interestingly, Nick's story demonstrated that that foster family, he had a very safe experience and a very loving and good experience. Not every foster family is like
That's
that,
right.
right? Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is interesting. I was speaking to someone recently and I don't really remember who, but the conversation landed on what would be different in the way that we approach life if we really believed that every experience in our life was simply and solely for our becoming.
Right. Right. That's tough. I think it's tough when it has to do with tragedy.
Oh yes.
That's a really hard one. I feel like for many of us, you have to get so much past the tragedy and so much inner work before you can even entertain that idea,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
right.
But I do think that if we could, approach our lives that way, right? It does push us up into a lofty connection of how could my higher self have been looking for some sort of experience to help me evolve in this way to deal with this, right? Like that's a big question.
That's a big question. It's a little woo. Okay. Okay.
It is. But I do feel like, look, we're talking big stuff.
We are. We are.
Yeah.
And and I think that's why the exercise that Rich Gorsuch introduced me to was so powerful for me, because it was early in my spiritual outness, right?
Yeah.
Um, but so it really helped me to look at me as the human,
Mhm.
right? How have I changed and grown? What have I learned? Right? Where are the golden nuggets in this experience?
Yeah.
Even though the experiences were very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think there's this beginning point for those people who aren't steeped in their spiritual journey, who don't have a strong belief in, a greater purpose and order of the universe, right?
Hmm.
How do you make sense of some of the things that the challenges and difficulties and adversity that you have been through? Like you mentioned safety as the
Hmm.
initial floor, right?
Hmm.
You need to have an amount of safety in order to begin to process. And then what next?
Yeah. Well, I always feel like emotionally, right? Knowing that you're having an emotional experience around it, to be able to start to just name what that is and to be able to have some language and have a safe place to talk about that
Yes.
piece of it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That came out in my conversation with Nick about, growing up, he didn't learn how to identify, name, and process emotion.
Hmm.
And it really showed up, his inability showed up as he became, even a young adult in relationships,
Yeah.
right? And so that safety first, the emotional, what would you call awareness,
Support,
support,
awareness,
right?
that the all the things that are required in order to start to have a healthier emotional life and to be able to
Yes.
process emotions. I think processing, that's such a weak area in our culture. It truly is. It still is. I know we're probably gaining, at some level we are probably growing and gaining, but we're still very, oriented towards, right, wrong, left brain, yeah, justice, right, that kind of stuff. And it's like when it gets to the heart, matter, right, the emotional experience, it's a different ball game. It's not the
Yes.
same
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Even when I think about, growing up in New England with, you know, I joke that my mother's family, you know, direct lineage to the Puritans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stoic,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Really, really did not show emotions.
Yep.
And so learning how to do that despite the culture and the society that we live in, talk about safety. I mean, if you don't have a safe place to feel your emotions, to be able to talk about your emotions, that also is a place where you
Yeah.
need safety.
Yeah, and it's a place where you can compound your trauma if you don't have it too. So
Yeah.
that's a really important piece of it.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the mental realm, which is being able to tell your story and recast your story, right? And we did a whole
Yes.
episode on change your story, change your life. And
Yes.
we know how powerful, what is the story that we tell ourselves. And oftentimes, just like when we started talking about, at the beginning of the show, is are you the hero or the heroine of your journey, of your story, or are
Right.
you, the victim of your story,
Yes.
right, in your story? So, if we want to cast ourselves as the hero or the heroine, then the whole story has got to play out so that you're rising and, becoming resilient, overcoming adversity and growing and becoming,
Yes.
yeah, all that you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, those topics, the safety, the emotional processing, changing your story,
Yeah.
we have been talking about these ideas and these actions for a long time. They all show up in doing the inner work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all part of the transformational process, right? Because if you think about, so for those of you that might be new to the work or new to the show, if this is your first season with us, go back, check out some of our shows. We have lots there, talk about so many good things. But, I know Laurel and I both, when we've been working with clients, we've talked about how helping all clients and all people to come back into the full experience of being a human, right? And so there's these, I think of them as four levels of your intelligence. You have a physical being that has all kinds of information to give you and offer you that can provide great, guidance for you ultimately. Then you have your emotional life, same thing, right? Our emotions all are there to help guide us, teach us, help us to grow. They're not there to hurt us and, cause us to become prisoners of them, so to speak, but really to help us, right? So you have to get a language around your emotional state. Then there's your mental state, the mind, and how the mind works. And ultimately, we direct the mind, right? Our mind will create habits, but we have to be the director of that program.
Yes, we do.
And we have to really choose consciously around all of that.
We
Otherwise, we
do.
end up in a mess. Yeah.
That's right.
And then your spiritual life, right?
Yes.
And for those of us that are conflicted about our spiritual life, it makes it really hard to have this kind of resting place of faith and comfort and a sense of reason that we're here and, all the things, right, that allow us to just say, hey, this is part of being a human in this lifetime.
That's right. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting to hear you talk about them, as the components maybe of our life, right? Because I often think about all four of those as as components of wellness,
Yeah. And I call them
right?
intelligences, really, as
Yes,
part of
they
our
are
intelligence system.
intelligences,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And last year I did a talk to a leadership group that was about wellness, and we focused on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Yeah.
Because the
Right.
combination of those intelligences, those areas, if you can really, I'll say, be intentional,
Yeah.
right? What do you want? What do you want your wellness to be like in each of those areas?
Yeah.
I always think about you can't be physically healthy and emotionally unhealthy and have it not show up somewhere.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I always go back to my Chinese medicine, experience of taking a lot of classes and learning and growing in that area and realizing, how the energy of who we are connects all those aspects of our life and they're all interrelated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think you're onto something that ties back to becoming resilient.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about needing safety. We talked about needing to process and name emotion.
Hmm.
But but could you, and this is just a thought, is there an aspect of physical wellness or mental wellness or spiritual wellness that if emotionally you're not at your best or your fittest, can the other areas help you become more emotionally well?
Yeah, that's great. I feel like one small example of that, I'll give you a quick lesson from my teacher back in the day, right? He used to always say, if you feel emotionally stuck in some way, the worst thing you can do is sit around. So if you're sitting around kind of stewing on it, get up and go get active and do something else,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That in our culture, it's very acceptable to focus on our physical wellness.
Yeah.
And sometimes that physical wellness helps us process emotion,
Yeah. Yeah.
helps us process or tap into our spiritual intelligence, right? I joke that I can't walk in the woods without feeling connected to a greater
Yeah.
being,
I feel the same way.
right?
I feel
And
the same
so
way.
so I love that, all four of these intelligences are avenues that we as humans can become more resilient.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely they are. So I hope that, if you joined us today, you've got some great ideas about how to begin to look at your own level of resilience and maybe even just start, when you're faced with a challenge, right? Begin to look at your habits around that. I know I put some questions into my email in August to people. So if you aren't on my email list and you want some extra journaling questions, come sign up for my email. I put journaling questions in every month, and you can get some. And I know you usually do that too, Laurel,
I
in your
do,
in your
yes.
email. Yeah. So both of us are, we're big on the journaling questions and asking you to really reflect on your life, because we know the power of reflection and how much information it can provide to you, and then eventually give you some good guidance as you become armed with your own wisdom, shall we say?
That's right. Yeah, and that's a great reminder that not only are we bringing, these conversations and concepts and client stories and our own stories out to the world through our podcast, we also do it in our email.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just another area that if our listeners are interested, if you're interested in more of these topics, our email is a great place
Yeah.
to to find more information.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, Laurel, I guess as we wrap up the show, just kind of thinking about how intelligence and how complex we are as humans, right? If we even just finally stay with that simple idea of, we have four intelligences. There's four pieces of inner work to do, right? To just get in touch with those really well, to get to know them better, to own them as intelligences, right? As a part of your guidance system for your life. That's going to help you grow, I think, your resilience in the long run.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. I didn't expect that that's where we were going to land in those four intelligences, but it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And, or call them wellnesses, call them whatever you want, but,
yeah.
just take a look, right?
Yes,
And
that
take a
we
look
have
and see.
access
Mm,
to so many tools
yeah.
and guides, and
Yeah.
some of them are within us, and they often are within our. You talked about power and resilience
Mm,
being powerful.
yeah.
Like we are powerful human beings, and we have access to tools that we need, and if we tap into them, we are going to become resilient.
Yeah, yeah. And we are complex. So if you're feeling like you're struggling and you're confused and you're having a hard time and you always challenge, it's like, well, you know what? We're trying to operate some really complex machinery, aren't we, Laurel?
Oh my gosh, aren't we ever? And you're not
Yeah,
alone. If that's how you're
I
feeling, you're
know.
not alone.
I know.
We're going to end this conversation, you and I, Laurel, and I'm going to go off for a walk and be, playing the reel in my head about these intelligences and am I taking care of them,
Yeah,
all four of them.
yeah, yeah.
There's so much that we just touched on today, and I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Oh, me too. All right. Well, we're going to be back for more conversation together in September. And in the meantime, Laurel's going to be offering you guidance again, beginning of the end of the month. We've got a new guest for you next month and every month to come up. And as we go through this beautiful 2025, 26 season, we're excited to share more with you. And we'll be back for more, won't we, Laurel?
We will.
Okay. But bye for
Bye.
now, everybody.
Bye-bye.